Hello students, in this module we are going to do the teachings of Guru Nanak we have done. So we'll move further to other sources of the composite culture. So here we will begin with Ajmer Sharif. So Ajmer Sharif, as I read, please take out your books and do see in your books while I'm reading and explaining. It says Ajmer Sharif is the holy shrine of the Sufi saint, and the name of the saint is Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. It is located in Ajmer, that is in Rajasthan. So Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, he came to India, and that was with Muhammad of Ghazni, and made Ajmer his headquarters till he died over there. That means till his death he was there only, and he died in 1236 AD. So the Dargah of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti is considered to be one of the most respected site in India. And besides that, it is not only for Muslims but even for the non-Muslims. It is considered to be a very sacred visit by many of the non-Muslims. They come, they visit, and they usually have their wishes and prayers done over there. Every year, thousands of people it is given they visit Ajmer Sharif to pay reverence to the sanctified Dargah. And besides that, a yearly carnival known as Urs is held for 6 days in the honor of the beloved saint over there, and that shows the mixed cultures that we've got from there, because this was someone who he was someone who came with the Turks, or with the Ghazni. The main attraction of the shrine is the mausoleum containing the tomb of the saint. The Dargah has many attractive buildings, so it is not only one building, but this entire building has a series of various other buildings which comprise the entire area. The main mausoleum has the tomb. Along with that, it also has various other such buildings which are an attraction for the visitors, tourists, pilgrims, and so on, some of which are specimens of the Mughal architecture and were erected during the Mughal period. So it was started by Ghazni, but later onwards it were many of the things, purification and buildings, they were all built and made by the Mughals. So it is basically the style and architecture is of Mughal period. The main gate of the shrine is the Nizam Gate, followed by Shahjahani Gate, erected by the Mughal Emperor. You can understand by the name itself that Nizam Gate and Shahjahani Gate, these are the important gates of this particular building, and they have been made by the Mughals. As by the name itself, you can say the Shahjahani Gate was erected by Shah Jahan. There are two huge cauldrons. Degs are basically the cauldrons in which the food is cooked, and this is for cooking foods fixed into solitary masonry, in which a palatable mixture of rice, sugar, ghee, butter, and dried fruit is cooked. In basic way, you can understand it is basically the kheer or the dessert that we prepare. So it is made for that, and one of the deg was presented by Akbar also. So among those two degs, one was of Akbar's time period. The tomb is of white marble inlaid with pieces of precious stones, and is daily bestrewed with sandalwood paste and perfume. So it is very nicely preserved, made up of all the gemstones and beautified with that. That is also preserved with the sandalwood paste and perfumes, so that it always remains peaceful, beautiful, and at the same time sanctified. Over the tomb there is a silver canopy, chapar khat, inlaid with pieces of mother of pearl presented by Emperor Jahangir. He gave this particular mother of pearl are basically the pearls, and that entire silver canopy is made up of those pearls. You can say silver pearls. There is a silver railing, and it also arcs towards the south of the tomb, or south of the building. So these are the special features of this building, and this also shows some of the exquisite styling architecture of that particular time period, which shows the Mughal Empire, Mughal period, Mughal architecture in, you can say, fusion with the Persian or the Turkish, so the Turks. So that is how we can say this entire thing turned out to be a fusion of all the best things in different cultures, and that is why we call it as the composite culture, which made India even richer in culture. To you can say, take these things, they by all the good qualities of these cultures, all the good features, and make and develop into a totally new different style of architecture, culture, and that turned out to be the beautiful example of composite culture. Next we have, now we have done about Guru Nanak, we have done about Sant Kabir, Baijak, we have done about Ajmer Sharif. Another important factor that came in India and was widely, you can say, influencing India, the architectural style, the other different styles of culture. So that was from Christianity. It is, for this we will be reading St. Francis Church that was in Kochi. So here, St. Francis Church in Fort Kochi originally was built in 1503. It was many times broken, renovated, and passed on from various hands to different people to look after it. So that is why we can say originally it was built in 1503, and it is one of the oldest European church in India by now till now. The Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama died in Kochi in 1524 when he was on his third visit to India. So at that time, his body was originally buried. Vasco da Gama, we are talking. He was a famous, you can say, he used to go explorer, going from various places. He came over here in the third visit. He died in Kochi, and his body was preserved over there, buried over there in the church. But after 14 years, his remains were moved to Lisbon. The gravestone of Vasco da Gama can still be seen over there. So his body was taken later onwards to Lisbon, but his gravestone still remains there, and it is still very evidently can be seen that the grave where he was originally buried, but then he was removed from there. His remains. Vasco da Gama, who discovered the sea route from Europe to India, landed at Kapar near Kozhikode. That is now today modern day. You can understand it by the name Calicut. In 1498, he was followed by various other such explorers. They built a fort at Kochi with permission from the Raja of Cochin. So Raja of Cochin gave the permission, and these people, when they came to India, they established a particular, you can say, fort over here. Within the fort, they built a church with the wooden structure. The neighborhood hood is now known as Fort Kochi. So on the entire area where they built the fort, they had a church also over there made of all the wooden work. But here we can say now most of the things are not in the same shape, but still the area over there is entirely known by the name Fort Kochi. In 1506, Francisco de Almeida, the Portuguese viceroy, was allowed by the Raja of Cochin to reconstruct the wooden building in stone and masonry. The wooden church was rebuilt, and presumably by the Franciscan friars who belonged to the order of Saint Francis of Assisi. The Franciscans retained control over the church till the Dutch captured it in 1663. So at that time, the fort of Kochi and that church of Kochi was all taken by Francis de Almeida, and he got it reconstructed. Later onwards, it was taken by the friars of the Franciscan cult, and then after that, it was under their custody only for a long period of time. Like you can say from 1506 to 1663, it was all under the hands of the Franciscan friars. But by 1663, it was captured by the Dutch, and Dutch took over the control of this church as well. In 1795, the British captured Cochin. When British came and they started capturing many places, they captured Cochin also, and the Dutch later to retain the church, they allowed Dutch to take control of this. So in 1804, the Dutch voluntarily handed over the church to the Anglican sect. Anglican sect is another particular group of the Christians. So it was handed over to them by the Dutch. It is believed that the Anglicans changed the name of the church to St. Francis Church. So the St. Francis Church came into being by the Anglican Church, the Catholics, and they gave it the name, this which is commonly known as St. Francis Church. So that is how it was given the name and the particular, you can say, custody to the Anglican Church by the Dutch people. Next we see, when we are talking about St. Francis Church, it is very important to know who is this Franciscan, you can say, group, and who started it, and after whom is it named. So it is St. Francis Assisi that we are going to read about. St. Francis Assisi was an Italian Roman Catholic priest and preacher. So he was a Roman Catholic, the Catholic group, priest and preacher. He was born in 1182, and at that time he was born in a family of a prosperous silk merchant who lived a very wealthy life, and even fighting as a soldier for Assisi. On the eve of settling out for a battle, he experienced a vision which caused him to abandon his ambition for military glory. He wanted to be a soldier, he wanted to have a big name over there. But once at the evening time, while he was ending up a fight, at that time in the battle, he got a vision which made his life totally, you can say it was a turning point of his life. And from then onwards, he decided that he want to give away this ambition of becoming a soldier and he want to work for the Lord. At this time, he embarked on a preaching ministry. The small church of Portincula near Assisi, which he and his companions rebuilt with their own hands, became their base from where they constantly traveled. And traveling means going to different places, preaching about the word of God. The order of friars, miners, a religious society, grew rapidly and started sending missions beyond Italy to other countries in the Mediterranean Sea. So they started sending all these things, all the expeditions, and people taking the word of law to different places. Later onwards, he died in 1226 AD, that is on October 3. And on July 16, 1228, he was pronounced as a saint by the Pope. Most of the popes in the Catholic group, they give a designation of saint to many people, those who have worked exemplary work, extraordinary work in the field of religion and spreading out the word of Lord. So over there he was also venerated by this ways, and Saint Francis Assisi was given the title of saint. So many churches dedicated to Saint Francis Assisi were built all over India, and that is all by the Catholic group of the Christianity. So here we see about Saint Francis Assisi, the culture that came and that brought, it is not that it brought Christianity to India, but it brought a different style of architecture and different things in the culture, and they were also totally taken in by Indian culture. And that is how we can say this added more to the composite culture that we are talking about. Here let's talk about factors responsible for the growth of composite culture. So the factors which are responsible for the growth of composite culture are, we'll just do 4 points and then we'll end up the video. Here it says, first, immense wealth and unlimited power in the hands of the Mughals enabled them to continue their patronage for fine arts and architecture and literature. So they patronized many art, literature styles, and they were ready to take on the new styles that gave way to various new arts and literature and architectural styles to come in the Indian scenario. They used their wealth to build palaces, forts, and monuments. So the money that these kings had, this was all involved in building up the new buildings, new styles, new things, cultural heritage we have today. That was all built by these Mughals with the immense wealth that they had at their disposal. Next is another important factor that was the reason for composite culture is the relatively settled conditions and a long period of peace prevailed in the northern India paved the way for undertaking extensive works of art. So when the king was busy with the battles and saving their kingdoms, they never got time to emphasize to focus on the art, literature, or other such recreational things. But this was the time when there was a long period of peace and relatively calm, peaceful era, and kings were not so focused on fighting and establishing their kingdom. Rather, they had their established kingdoms, kingships going on. So that is why kingdoms and the kings, especially the Mughals and other such kings in the northern India, they had time to use and employ their time in creative things and introducing new creative arts to the culture, and that way it made way for the composite culture. Third point, the Mughal emperors had a great sense of beauty and art. Each of them was anxious to find out an outlet for their expression in some visual art. So when they were themselves interested in knowing different forms of art, different ways of expressing the emotions and feelings, then that always led to the opening for new style of, you can say, art, architecture, literature, creative arts. All of them, it made way for all of them to be explored by these kings and their noblemen, their ministers, their particular people, those who are interested in that, artisans. And that was the reason why it added and made way for the composite culture. The fourth point, the glorious and rich cultural heritage of the Mughals on one hand and the Indians on the other hand created a unique atmosphere for the brilliant output of letters and fine arts. So while the kings were interested, the people were learned, and there was way for people to know more different new things coming from different parts of the world. And because of that, people learned new different techniques, brilliant styles of letters, fine arts, and various things. They crept in the Indian culture, and they were equally taken up by the people. They were not forced to do it, but they themselves were interested in knowing this. And so with the help of the, or with the patronage of the kings, people themselves were interested in taking these things and imbibing them and taking them in their culture. And that is how they all were taken very happily by the Indian, you can say, population, by the Indian masses. And that is how in the kingdom, in that particular era, most of the new things were very well easily introduced as well as accepted by the people. And this also led to the composite culture that was framed, or that was formed during that period. So with this, we come to the end of the factors responsible for the growth of composite culture. In the next video, we will be doing the impact of composite culture, and then we will move further to the two different bhakti movements, religious movements, the Sufism as well as the bhakti movement. We will be beginning with the bhakti movement. But today, do go through this particular chapter, revise whatever we have done, whatever I have tried to explain and read for you. You also go read, understand it. If you don't understand it, listen to this video again and just revise it so that it is thorough with you. You don't have to go and read it again and again during the exams. At this time, if you revise then and there, that very day, it will be easier for you to remember. So with this, we come to the end of the video.